Have you ever found yourself in a situation, a relationship, where you're trying to get your needs met, but you're trying to get them met by someone who's unwilling or incapable of meeting them? It's sort of like being really thirsty and then trying to quench your thirst by drinking wine. And the wine just dehydrates you more. It doesn't quench the thirst because what you really needed was water. But you keep drinking the wine trying to quench the thirst. And that's what this cycle in any relationship that is one-sided in this way, that's kind of what happens. Whether it's a dating relationship or a marriage relationship, it is a level of emotional poverty. So the real question is, why do you keep trying to make something happen using the same techniques that don't work? Well, today I'm going to dive all the way into this because you can absolutely address these issues, and it really helps to get an understanding about why this is happening and where it comes from, and I'm going to talk all about that today. For those of you who are new to the channel, I'm Ketra Thompson, and I'm a certified master hypnotist. What I do is I help my clients address the underlying issues on a subconscious level that are driving their unwanted behavior, that are driving their dynamics in their work life, in their relationship life, that are really keeping them held back from having the life that they want. And I help them reframe those subconsciously so they can have this new operating system in life, helping them accomplish the things that they really want in life. So before I dive all the way in, I do want to remind you to click like and subscribe so you can be notified every time I post a new video. And I would love to hear your comments as well. Feel free to leave comments below because I try very hard to respond to all of those. And I love hearing what resonates with you and any questions you might have so that I can address them in future videos. So today I want to talk about this emotional poverty issue and this repetitive pattern of trying to get someone else to meet your needs, and when they aren't willing to do that. I want to talk about it from a couple of different viewpoints, but dating and marriage, it can have a lot of similarities and it can also have some differences. So in the dating scenario, you keep pouring out your affection, you keep loving this person, you keep pouring into them, and you're hoping that by you doing this, by you kind of being people-pleasing in this way, or wanting to pour out, that they're going to reciprocate. And sometimes that can be an unconscious assumption that isn't actually communicated. And so when someone brings up the need for reciprocation, that's when everything goes sideways. Asking to be loved in return, to be given affection and consideration and communication and depth, that probably is where things go sideways if you are dealing with someone who tends to have a bit of an avoidant personality type in their relationships. When you're asking for something real, they kind of say you're asking for too much, or why do you have to always bring this up, or why is it such a big deal, or aren't we just having fun doing things the way we are? And they kind of push your concerns aside and don't validate them. Now, this plays out in marriages as well. And in marriages, you might keep asking for your partner to go deeper, to have more connection, to check in with you, to communicate more. Maybe you're asking them to not do bullying behavior or withdrawing of affection. And you are the one who's trying to do all the things, thinking if I do X, Y, and Z, then I'll get what I need from them. And the problem is, you don't get what you need from them. You build up resentment about them, and in some cases you're expressing that need, and in other cases you're not. But in either case, usually you're creating a narrative in your head that says that you are the good guy, that you are asking all the right things, wanting to be vulnerable, desiring this connection, and they are the bad guy because they aren't giving it. And I want to challenge you today to look at what role you're playing, not because the other person isn't at fault in some of this behavior, isn't causing severe emotional pain to you with the withholding of their affection. All of that is valid, but there could be some reasons why you stay in a dynamic like that. So the real question you want to start with is, do you really want that level of depth and connection with your partner. Because if you do, and you are staying in the situation of being the martyr in that dynamic, you're trying to stay in this mode of being the good guy and seeing them kind of as the villain. And you're not actually saying, if these are needs for me to have met, how can I actually meet them? Maybe I can meet them with others outside of this relationship. Maybe I can't. Why am I staying in this relationship if it isn't reciprocal and it isn't meeting my needs? And that's where you want to start first and foremost. Why are you staying? And I know there's a lot of reasons. There's trauma bonding and there's all kinds of dynamics that can play into that. And I'm not going to dive deeply into those other reasons. But first of all, get honest with yourself. Because the reality is that if someone else, even if you switch to a new partner who is emotionally available and connected, and they start giving you what you've been asking for, get really honest about yourself about how that will make you feel. Will it cause you to pull back and actually want to close off and pull away because you don't know how to be deep and vulnerable? So we want to really get real with ourselves, and then we want to look at why this is happening. So as a kid, there's a lot of conditioning that happens, especially from birth to age 7, but even after that. So if you were not able to express your feelings as a kid, if you weren't validated for your feelings, if you didn't have consistency in the way your parents parented you, then this might have created this disconnection where you feel safer dealing with issues on your own and pulling back. And so sometimes when that happens, we unconsciously could choose partners who do not get vulnerable with us because it doesn't force us to get vulnerable with them. So we have to stop looking outward and we have to start looking inward. Now, there's a time and place to acknowledge what someone else's damaging behavior is and does and take action on it, but we can't keep pointing the finger and staying in the same dynamic without making some kind of shift or change and expect anything to change. So when we look inward, we have to ask, why is this happening? And we have to begin the awareness process. So if we have willingly stayed in something for a really long time that isn't meeting our needs, the other dynamic you want to be careful of, and I won't dive deeply into this today, but it's breadcrumbing. So when you're starving, breadcrumbs taste pretty good. You've probably all been, in a situation, maybe never when you're starving, but like camping or something, and you're like, these eggs never tasted so good. I've never had this thing that tasted so good. And it maybe isn't that it tastes so good, it's just that you're so hungry. So when you're starving, breadcrumbs taste really good. And so when you get a few breadcrumbs when you've been starving, you immediately give those breadcrumbs more credit than they deserve. You go, oh, finally, I'm getting something of what I need. That tastes good. Everything's good. I'm going to stay. And it creates this cycle. And this cycle is what can create so much really emotional damage in a long-term relationship that is not reciprocal. So let me give you some examples of how our childhood can really affect this. So emotional poverty might feel familiar if you've experienced some things in your childhood. Like in my own life, when I was 5 years old, my parents divorced. My dad moved across the country, really not by his choice, but because that's where his work took him. All I knew is that I had a broken heart at an age when I could not process that kind of heartbreak. And I was still forming my subconscious belief system during that time. And you can probably imagine that that feeling of abandonment affected me. And it also affected the way I created my life and the partners that I had chose moving forward into my future. And it took me a lot of inner work and a lot of reframing of those beliefs to shift this pattern. And I remember in my early 20s, I sort of harshly judged others for not being able to get over certain things or deal with certain things, and or even for being too emotional. And I was sort of shut off from my own pain. And in my early to mid 20s, I really started shifting because I started experiencing the grief that I had delayed for so long and processing it, unpacking that pain, realizing the reality of my parents and their situation, and also having my own kids helped me process so much of that because now I had a different viewpoint. So all of those things are really helpful, but doing really deep subconscious work is really profound and really direct, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I just want to list a few of the things that can show up in your life if you are dealing with some emotional poverty. So you might have any of these on any part of the spectrum of minor to major. So sometimes you might feel worried or anxious. You might have a short temper. You might feel like it's hard for you to express love and affection. You might feel afraid of intimacy or vulnerability. You might feel embarrassed to show your emotions. You might feel embarrassed when someone else shows their emotions. You might believe that showing emotions is a sign of weakness. You might believe that real men don't cry. You might judge women for being too emotional. You might find it hard to express how you really feel. You might hide your true feelings. You might harbor secret emotional trauma or abuse from your past that you keep hidden away. You might hold on to grudges and find it really difficult to forgive and release. You might feel haunted by past humiliations and failures. You might see yourself as a loser or not good enough as everyone else. You might hold on to feelings of anger, jealousy, resentment, revenge. You might feel sad for no reason. And you might have feelings of helplessness or hopelessness. So all of these things can create a pattern in your life that keeps you from having what you want. Not only relationally in your intimate relationships, but also even in your work life. Because there's fears underneath this driving the unwanted behavior in your life. And all of this programming happens from birth to age 7, which is really when we are in the hypnotic state and we are being programmed, but we don't have any discernment. So we aren't able to look at the situation around us and say, oh, I get it, they didn't mean that, right? Like we really aren't able to do that. And so this programming that goes into it is a mixed bag of really great things that we get from the people around us and really negative belief systems. Even if they're not being told to us, we're internalizing them. And so they can play out in our relationships. And it's really easy to point the finger at someone else who may very well be toxic, abusive, avoidant, emotionally destructive, all of those things. But the real question is, why are you trying to continue to fix someone else? When we try to control the behavior of the people outside of us or the situations outside of us, the focus is not on us. We are not doing the integrative healing work. We are outward focused. The focus is on changing them. And at some point, when you express needs and the other person does not want to reciprocate, you have to ask yourself, why? What am I trying to prove to myself? Am I trying to replay something from my past where I finally get chosen by this avoidant type of person? Do I feel like that's going to give me worth or value? And so awareness is the first step of what you can do to start fixing this problem in your life today. You want to get honest with yourself, and you want to realize that you also play a part. Even in a toxic relationship where the other person is creating the bulk of the toxic damage, you might be in a situation where you're trauma bonded. You might have these issues from your past, but whatever it is, the work starts inside of you. So first of all, I want you to get honest with yourself and start writing down whether or not there's a pattern of this behavior in your life. Write down what that is, what it looks like. Also, reflect on whether or not you behave differently when you are in a relationship with someone who is giving you the things you want. Are those people a turnoff to you? Do you run away from them? Do you push them away quickly? Because that can help you understand what part you're playing in the dynamic, even with someone who you want to be with that isn't reciprocating. And so you want to get honest with yourself about those things. And then I would encourage you to get vulnerable with people you trust. Start talking about things that are fears for you or that you are noticing about yourself, or vulnerable things that you kept hidden for so long. Start talking about them, because once you bring them into the light, they don't feel quite as scary. And of course, hypnotherapy is a great option. And the reason for this is because around age 7, we have this sort of shutdown, this critical factor that goes into our brain that locks down our subconscious mind. It's a comparing mechanism, and it doesn't let new beliefs come in. And so, change can become very difficult for this reason. And so, when you have a customized hypnotherapy process, you can finally access that part of the subconscious mind, reframe those beliefs that are driving your unwanted behavior, and create huge amounts of momentum in your growth and change, because you only get one life. And you can waste it doing the same things you've always done, or you can get really real with yourself and decide that you don't want to function this way, that you want to be able to not internalize other people's opinions of you as the definition of who you are, that you finally want to be connected to your self-worth, express your needs, wants, and desires, and implement boundaries when needed, because you get one life. It's yours to live. You shouldn't have to live it in a place of being trapped by the behaviors that were caused by your childhood upbringing or by any kind of even past traumatic relationship event. So if you want to speed up that process, there is a link in the description below. You can schedule a completely free consultation call to go over all of this so I can ask you questions, get you some clarity, and we can decide if we're a good fit to work together. So check that out. You can also check out the link in the description below with my website information, giving you all of the options. And whatever modality you choose, I would encourage you to not try to do this alone. When you are creating change and addressing these old issues, it's really, really helpful to have a guide and to have someone help you unpack things that you don't have clarity about, and they can help gain that clarity with you and then help you implement the process of integrating the changes. Because you can read a book and you can get all this head knowledge, but if it isn't integrated into your daily life, into your behavior, then it's not going to change the way that you live your life or the way that you feel. So you don't have to do this alone. I would love to talk to you and see if this is something that I can help you process through so it doesn't affect your romantic relationships, and even your family dynamics. This can have a ripple effect in a lot of areas of your life. So until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.